This is actually one of the great topics I love today. So here, let's look at, got a couple things to download. So we'll be automatically sending email and text messages from Excel today. So 2 things to download. There's a workbook to download, and there's also a text file to download so that we can have a little less typing in our lives today. So this one, if you follow this link, it'll probably just open up in a browser. Or if you right-click it, you should be able to say Save Target As or something similar. Save Link As, and that'll let you download the text file. And just put it in the same location as you're putting the workbook that we're working on. So here, these are the data that we're working with. So here's the idea, is that we are going to send email, but we're going to do it by kind of automating a mail merge straight from VBA. So here's the idea. You suppose that you've just been hired by the National Highway Transportation Safety Bureau to follow up with some people that have made complaints. It's a government agency, and they keep track of all, people make a complaint, they keep track of it. There's a database. I downloaded, I think in 1999, I downloaded all the complaints that had ever been received by the National Highway Transportation Safety Bureau. Some of them were pretty funny. Others are a little more somber because they're reports of cars failing and people dying as a result. I'm trying to think of what we did here. So injuries, how many people were injured. I guess I don't have whether people died on this one. A little too grim, I guess. So here is Evelyn Sabo. The names, by the way, are not included. I had to put in some fake names here. Email address, by the way, as you start working on this, realize that every email you see here comes to me. So, we're going to make a loop, and we're going to make sure that loop doesn't email all of these, especially not to me. So, anyway, yeah, these are not really their email. These are all various email addresses that come to me. So, but the rest of this is all true. So, in Finksburg, Maryland, this letter was sent in February 12th of 2000. Maybe it's time to update the data at some point. I don't know. So then we have some information about the car. So it was a Daimler Chrysler Corporation. It was a Jeep Cherokee, a 1990 Jeep Cherokee that failed when? In 1992. The letter's coming in 2000, which seems like a little bit of a delayed thing, but okay. Then we have the components. This is something about the brakes. And then here's the summary of what this complaint was. The paint is peeling off in sheets. That's great. And the brakes don't slow the vehicle consistently. Sometimes when you press, it's like there's nothing there. Let's see, what does this say? Yeah, it looks like this is even truncated as well. You don't have any brakes at all, but something. So ABS failed during loss of control, accident, and something. I don't know. YH seems to be the abbreviation of some operator or someone who's taken the information. On January 8th, 2000, I was a passenger in a 1990 Dodge Ram pickup truck westbound on the interstate. This one sounds like it's going to be a great story. I don't know what's happening here. Something's coming up. Okay, so here's the idea. You've just been given this set of folks you got to follow up with. And so the first thing you want to do is get an email off to these people and let them know that you're on the case and you're going to be working through and handling it. If they want to provide any other information, they're welcome to do it. And so, but you don't actually want to do that much work sending a personalized email, not when you have your own personal information slave who can do it for you. And so that's what we're going to do here today. So we've got that. Let me go ahead and open up the file that we downloaded. Oh, I guess I've got it right here. Download. No, here's the messages. So we got in the first line, then we've got the message. You got to think, or the subject line of the email. You got to think of all the email you get. How much? What would you say? Do you open half? How many say I open at least half of my email? Yeah, not me. I'm nowhere near half. I'll look at the email, and sometimes I know what the message says just by the subject. I don't have to open it. And sometimes I look at the message and go, I'm not going to open that one, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm trying to craft a message that would make me think, oh wow, I better open that one. So I drive a 99 Ford F350. I love that truck. And if I saw an email that said problem with my 99 Ford F350, I would think that's probably an email I'm going to open. At least this person knows that I have a particular kind of car. And so then we're going to say, Dear Gov. When I heard about the trouble you had with your 1999 Ford F-350, I was deeply troubled. That usually evokes a little bit of a chuckle, at least, since we're writing this, automatically. The reason I've been assigned to your case, I wanted to give you my information, so et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. As the Bureau is evaluating the make and system for a possible recall, if you would like to provide any more information, please don't hesitate to contact me. That you experienced back in the failure, please don't hesitate to contact me sincerely and then fill in this information and send it up. That's the idea. That's where we're headed. We ready to do it? Let's go ahead and do it. So let's get to some code. Alt F11. I have given you a module here called, it's called mod Gmail. So let's just take a look what happened to my code. Tools. Options, there we go. Editor format. Can't get to the Microsoft Sans Serif font without scrolling to it. Oh, we're not too bad. And our size, 18 should be enough. Is it big enough? You want to go a little bit bigger? In the back, are you okay? That size? Okay. So this module, mod Gmail, it has two functions in it. It has one for sending email with your BYU account, and then another one for sending with your Gmail account. And so depending on which account you're going to use, you just call a different function here. And if you had to do a different one, let's go ahead and we'll kind of look through the parameters that we have here. We'll talk about what's going on. We're not writing this code from scratch, but I want you to have a general feeling for it. So we're going to be using a couple of objects that are meant for sending email. So just like we created the Microsoft XML HTTP object to directly interact with a web server, we're going to be creating the common CDO, stands for common data object. So the common data object message and the common data object configuration, which will allow us to communicate with an email server. So we have a few variables up here. A couple of object variables in a string. So here's where we're creating one of those objects. So this is the information we need to manage the message, and then our config is the object we need to actually communicate with the mail server. So we've got these two different objects that have their own methods and properties. They know what to do. We just have to get them configured. And so the way that we configure it is by passing it kind of a long string. So our config has a set of fields. One of them is called send using. And it's kind of prefixed with this whole schema. Seems a little bit unusual, but hey, they wrote the object, they can do whatever they want. And so we got to say, how are we going to, there's different ways that we can send this. If we're sending it, if we're communicating with like an Exchange server, that's different than communicating with like an SMTP server. And so we're going to use this setting here as number 2. That's send using a port. That's what 2 means. We then need to know the server that we're going to communicate with, and this is the one that we use to send email here on BYU campus, gateway.byu.edu. That's the host name of that mail server. At least it was last time I did this example. Hopefully it's still the same one. What port are we going to, is that server listening for incoming mail on? And it's listening on port 25. Remember that when you have a server that's doing some kind of internet process, getting to the machine is not enough. You have to know the machine and the port that service is listening on. In this case, it's listening on port 25. How would you possibly find that out if it wasn't already here for you? This is the same information that folks need to configure mail clients. I would say most of you probably don't use a mail client anymore unless it's Outlook. You might use Outlook. But most of you are probably just using like Gmail or whatever website you use to send mail. But in the olden days, we used to regularly set up programs on our computers that were just for sending mail. And we would have to configure those programs to interact with the mail server. So the IT department is kind of used to saying, yeah, we know we have to give some information out so people can connect to the mail servers. That's what this information is. Are we going to authenticate? Yeah, we're going to, 1 here means we're going to use basic authentication. Send the username and a password. This is a NetID and your password as is passed into the function. So we're send BYU mail. We're going to send it an address that we send it to. Who is it sending from? Address, that it's coming from. Your NetID, your password, the subject, and the body. Optionally an attachment. And so this is getting that configured, and then we say, all right, we're now ready to update that configuration. So that should, let's see, that probably gets us that statement is probably getting us connected onto that server. And so that's the information to talk to the server. Now we got to configure the message. So we've created the message object. It's a new CDO message, and we're going to just configure the properties. We're going to say, who are we sending it to? Sending it to some email address. That's what's passed in. So send to is a parameter that's being called here when we call the function, being sent in when we call the function. Same with send as, body, and subject. That's all being passed in. By the way, you can provide both a text body and an HTML body. So if you want to get fancy with the way everything's laid out and configured, just do it as HTML, and you can do that. In fact, it may be strange to realize that you can actually send two different messages. You can send a text message and an HTML message, and depending on how the mail client receives it, it will choose which one to display, but they can be totally different messages that you're sending. One, how does this look for someone who can handle HTML, and one, how does it look for someone else? We'll just send it as a text message or as regular plain text. And then the sender name you can specify as well. There are other things that you can specify that in our environment the mail server is just going to ignore. But depending on how the mail server is configured, it may pass this information along. By the way, does it seem interesting that you're going to authenticate with one set of credentials and then still specify who the mail is coming from as a different one? That seems a little bit strange, and that's just part of the SMTP protocol, this SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol. So it was made before the internet, this protocol is before the internet, and it was made for a trusted network. In a situation that we trusted that when you said who it was from, it really was who it was from. And that's not necessarily the case anymore. So if you try to send a message to Gmail and you specify who it's from, they're going to ignore that. And who are they going to say it's from? Whoever authenticated. So, but as it turns out, the mail server here at BYU still trusts you. So you could actually stipulate a different send from than you used to authenticate, and really would look like it's coming from someone else. I really encourage you not to go crazy with that little piece of knowledge that I've given you. Yeah, I could imagine you getting in trouble for sending information as if it's coming from someone else using the university's resources to do that. So I just told you could do it, but you probably shouldn't do it. Question? This instance when you're authenticating so the question is, will that circumvent Duo? Will we need to somehow do Duo? And the answer is, it's like for two-factor authentication. And the answer is, that totally depends on what that mail server is expecting. So that mail server could be, even though your account normally says, hey, I want two-factor authentication for whatever I do, in this case, that mail server could just say, yeah, we don't need two-factor authentication. It's that server making the choice on what to do it. Now, you ready for something else? You don't even need your username or password. It's an open mail relay server. You can't bounce mail off of campus. If the connection comes from off of campus, it'll get ignored. So you have to be on campus when you send this, but you don't even have to authenticate. I left the username and password in there just because almost everywhere else you're going to have to put a username and password, so I left it in there in case you modify this. But in truth, you can skip the authentication. I may regret having said that too. We've got someone leaving right now to go send out a whole bunch of email, as if it's come from the university president, which you really could do. Okay. What do we have here? Oh, by the way, in the early days of Gmail, they had open relay servers as well. So, back in the late 1990s, you could just bounce any message off of Gmail's SMTP servers, say that the message was from anybody you wanted to say it was from, and people went crazy. So don't go crazy. I left this in here so you can add an attachment. So if you pass a path into a file, you can attach a file here. It's just add attachment. You specify the attachment. And this would let you add multiple attachments. This function doesn't. It gives you the ability to pass in one, and it attaches it. But you could write this, somehow do a loop and pass in a comma-separated list of file names or something. Okay. We then bind the configuration that we set up with the server onto that message. So we connect up the message with the server, and then we say send. Now, I've put an error trap around this because there could be several reasons why this message fails. Give me some thoughts as to why it might fail. Why might sending this message fail? Go ahead. Yeah, it could be a badly formed email address, and it'll just come back, sorry, that's no good email address. There could be, I might not be connected to the network. I might be in airplane mode or something. There are lots of reasons why it could fail. And so this will come back with an error code to kind of tell you what went wrong while you're talking with the server. Now, if it doesn't fail, it does not mean that the email goes through. If it doesn't fail, if the server accepts the message, all it means is, I looked at this message that you sent me, and it looks good. The email looks good. That's something I think I could deliver. And so it says it's off and trying to deliver it. The server you're talking to won't ever really know if the message gets through or not, because it just says, here's a message, and it's going to send it out to be sent. And it'll get routed through different places. And the only reason you'll have any reason to know that the thing failed is why? If it eventually gets to some other server that says, oh yeah, I'm the server for that email, but there's no name that belongs here, and it has the courtesy of sending you a response back, which is there's no guarantee that it will. So anyway, just because there's no error doesn't mean the message is going through. All it means is that the server accepted it for delivery. Whether it goes through or not is a different question. And then of course, if it ever gets to the person, whether the person, it got filtered off or something, you just won't know. So that's just what we deal with in email. So if there is no error, if error is 0, what does it mean? Error number 0. What's error number 0? No error. There's no error. And so we are just returning true. So the name of the function is send BYU mail. And so this is sending back true. Why am I sending back true? What's going on here? We're inside a function that I'm going to call. I'm going to say send BYU mail. And I'm going to say, here's the mail person you sent it to. Here's the subject. Here's the body. Here's who it's from. Here's my credentials. And it's going to try to send it. I'd like to be able to know from the calling position, did it dispatch the message or not? And so if we get here to where there was no error, then we're sending back true. So I can look at the result of this function and say, oh, yeah, it succeeded or it failed, because I'll want to behave differently if it failed. So if there's some kind of error, we're going to send back false, and we'll print up something that tells me something about it. So we'll get the error description. We'll see what time it was, who we're sending it to, and so forth. And that's then the procedure for sending the message. So, you ready to use it? Let's get down to business. I'm going to come back to Module 1. And we've got send mail here with a bunch of variables declared. I think I'm taking a little bit of a different approach than I've taken in the past on this particular example. So we may not use all of those, trying to close the wrong window, all of those variables. All right, so let's start off by reading in our text file message. What's that file called? It's called, oh, I can't see it here. You go into downloads, and I think I put it in a folder called mail. There it is. It's called email_message.txt. So we'd like to read that in so we can start working with it. So I think we have a template variable already declared here. So let's just go ahead and open that file. So open. Now we need some path for that file. Hopefully you've put that file in the same location where this workbook is. So you've saved this workbook somewhere. So we'll just say this workbook dot path. That'll get us to C:\users, whatever down wherever this workbook is, and then I will concatenate on this workbook, application.path separator. So that'll be the appropriate slash, depending on if you're on Mac or Windows, concatenated with the name of that file, email message.txt. We're going to open that for input as number 1. I'll make sure I close the file, close number 1. All right, and now I think I just want to read that whole file into my template variable. So template equals, function is called input. I got to tell it how many characters I want to read from which file, but it's from file number 1. I want to read, if I wanted to read the first 1,000 characters, I would put 1,000 here, but I want all of them. The trouble is, I don't know how many characters there are there. And so I'm just going to ask for LOF, length of file, for 1. And so this will read the whole file and return it to the template variable. So let me put a stop here. I'm going to run to this point and just take a look and make sure I've got that variable in there. Question mark template. All right, so it looks like I've successfully read the file from disk and I've got it going in. Let's go down to that code. There we go. So that's the idea. I've got some file out there. I'll just change that file, get ready to send it, and then we'll be ready to dispatch it. So the way I imagined this example was to say we're going to kind of individually create every single one of these different variables. It's just similar to the way we worked with SQL. We're just going to replace these little tags with what I want to plug in there, and then I'll have the text bundled up the way I want it, and we can use that to send the message. But let's try to do this a little bit in a little bit more general way, and we might need to modify our text file just a little bit. Well, we could either modify the text file or we could modify the data file. So instead of saying, let's individually handle the model year, the make, the model name, the first name, the model year, and so forth. Instead, why don't we try to generalize this? Let's read those as the column headers and use that to replace the text. Let me show you what I mean. Okay, so I've got here, dear first name. So let me come over here and look at my worksheet. And do I have a first name in here? Is it in a separate field? I think it is. Yeah. Unfortunately, it's called fname. So let's do this. I'm going to leave the data file just the way it is, and let me go modify my text file to anticipate fname instead of first name. So I'm going to open up that text file in a text editor. And instead of first name, I'm going to change that to fname. So we're about to write a procedure that says, hey, listen, we've got to a new row. We've gotten to a row of data. Let's look across that whole row of data. Let's look and see if any headers are set up as tags in my template and replace them with the data from the current variable. So let's see what else we have to change in here. So we've got model year, make, and model name. Probably got to change all of these. Model name is the same. Make is called make name. So let me change, in my text file, let me change make to make name. I'll leave them in all uppercase. Do we have model year? I think we probably do have model year. Oh no, it's called year text. Change model year to year text. Was it YEARTXT? But I can see I've got that in a couple of places. Model year, make name. I was deeply troubled. Make and system. What's that? Oh yeah, make and system. You know what? Let's call that good. We can put make this way. Whoops. Make name. System I'm wanting to do be a little bit more sophisticated with, because I don't want to just drop this whole thing in here. I think I want to take the very last part of this. I don't want it to just drop brakes, hydraulic, anti-skid system. So we're not going to, so we'll go ahead and leave system in there as a tag, but it's one that we'll know won't be replaced automatically. And is fail year in here? There's fail date, but we want just the year to go into our message, so that one we'll have to handle separately as well. Agent name, agent phone, we'll do those as well. Okay, yeah. Tier text. Thank you. All right, I'm going to go ahead and save that. And so now, most of these are going to go in automatically. I'll have a few that I will need to kind of to treat separately. So let's go ahead and build the structure that it would take to do that. So let's start by getting something that will run across these rows. So I've already got R declared as an integer. Probably would prefer it as a long, but integer will be fine. So let's go ahead and initialize R to row number 2, and then a simple do loop. Do until, what's our sheet called? Well, it looks like our sheet is, the label, it's called data, but it has an object name of letter. So let's just use that. Do until letter.cells, row number R, column number 2, dot value is a 0-length string. Why 2 instead of 1? Because 1 is holding the date that we sent the message. So it's blank right now. So as long as we've got a first name, we're going to iterate down through. Do until that equal to, oh, we better do something to change R in here. R equals R plus 1. And always a good idea, especially with the do loop, to put in do events. That's one word. All right, let me just go ahead and do a debug.print of our first name, just to make sure that I've got this set up correctly. Come back to where I'm initializing to, whoops, not next, but loop. Sorry. I'm confusing my two basic kinds of loops. And so that's successfully running across the data and stopping when we get to the end of it. So that's a pretty good looking loop. Okay. Let's do this at the beginning of the loop. We're going to need, so we've got a template. We've read the template in from file. We want to leave that unchanged. But we're going to have to create a message from that template for every different row here. So let's begin inside our loop here by saying our message equals our template. And now we want to start working to replace various values. So what I want to do is, on this row, I just want to scan right across all of these headers. I may even start with 1. So I'm just going to go as long as I've got data across the top of here. So another loop that goes across. And we're going to be looking for tags that are identified with the same text as the column name, and we'll do a replace. So quickly, a little loop that will do this. Do I already have a column variable set up? Looks like I don't. So let me declare my column variable, dim c as an integer. Now inside my row, I'm going to go across every single column. So another do loop. Let's go ahead and start c equal to 1. Do until letter dot cells, row number 1, column number c, dot value is blank. Loop. Better increment c in here. And to do events. Okay, so now in this inner loop, we're going to go onto the right row, and then we're going to go across all of the columns. So here's where I want to start replacing whatever might be in my template, or now my message. So replace, look at the, let's see, We're going to set the message equal to something. Message equals replace function, looking at the message, looking for something, replacing it with something. Go ahead. Good question. So, after all, we're going right down, we're going to have a row and a column. So the outer loop's moving us row to row, but on each row, what I want to do is I want to look across the header column. So I'm going to look to see, I'm not even going to look to see if it's there. I'm just going to replace every occurrence of a tag that is first name, and I'll replace that in my text. So I will need to pull the data off, but right now I'm just going to be going after I'm going right across that header. Okay, so what am I looking for? Well, I'm looking for something in square brackets. And then I'm looking for the column in my header inside those square brackets. And so let me splice this in with a couple of quotes and a couple of ampersands. So I'm looking for, and those headers are in lowercase, so I better uppercase this. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the uppercase version of a column header inside of square brackets in my message. And every occurrence of that I find, I want to replace it with something. What do I want to replace it with? I want to replace it with whatever I have in the same column on the row that I'm working on. So I'm looking for the tag, replacing it with the value on the current row. Whew. How are we doing? It's a little more abstract than I've taught it in the past. You might be looking at this going, wow, this is just witchcraft. How many of you are saying, in fact, I saw this in another class today, which I thought was pretty clever. Let's hold up a hand with a number of fingers that says, how well you're doing at this. You think you totally got this? Show me 5 fingers. If you said, you know what, I'm a little shaky here, 1 or 2 fingers, 4 or 5, a couple of 2s and some 1s. Okay. So let's just walk through this part of the code again. So we are going to be going through every row. So r is equal to 2. This outer loop's going to take us through. Show me how you feel about the outer loop. Outer loop's feeling good. Okay, now we're on that row number 2. Now we're going to iterate across all of the columns in row number 1. What are we going to do? The first time we execute that line of code, that loop, we're looking right here. And I'm going to say, all right, I'm looking at row 1, column 1. I want to find any tag, open bracket, message sent in my template. Do I have any? No, I don't. But I'm writing this in a general way so that if I decided I wanted to put a last name tag in, I could just do it and the code's already set up to do it. And so when I get to this first replace, I'm saying, look at my message, which looks a lot like this. And we're going to put a new value in it. What is it going to be? It's old value, but we're replacing, by looking at the old value, looking for some special text in there. An open bracket, an open angle bracket with the uppercase version of whatever I have on the current column 1 of row number 1. So this is going to be message sent. This will be the uppercase version of whatever I have in that first column, message space sent. And I'm just going to be looking for any occurrence of open bracket capital message sent in my message. And when I find it, what am I going to replace it with? Same column, column number 1, but the data from whatever row that I'm on. So R is 2, so this will be replacing with whatever is there. Now, we're not going to find message sent because that's not a tag that we're interested in, but we are going to find f name. So when we get to the next time through that inner loop, it's going to look for open bracket f name in capitals, and it's going to find it, open bracket f name in capitals, and it's going to plug in Evelyn, dear Evelyn. Well, Evelyn's all uppercase, and so what is it really going to do? Dear Evelyn! And she'll immediately know this is a form letter. So maybe we should, we could probably proper case all of these things. It's a little bit dangerous because we're making this general. So, oh, wait a minute. She's not in uppercase. She's in lowercase. Oh, we're good. Never mind. Oh, it's the city. The city is what I saw that was in uppercase. So yeah, if we actually put the city in there, we'd probably want to do something with it. So it looks like we're great. Okay, and so now I'm just changing that message every time, and that should get that whole message set up with the actual values. Ooh, I'm kind of excited to see if this works. So I'm going to take my current statement indicator. I'm still in break mode here. You can run it again if you don't have a breakpoint in here, but I'm just going to drag this back to row 2. Oh, I don't really want to be printing this debug. I don't really want to print that. And so I'll run that again. Oh, I really want to stop on the inside of my loop. Let's go back so we're all just on the first one. No wonder that took so long to run. So I've got to stop inside the loop. I'll run this again, and that should give me now the message should be somehow formatted. Oh, I haven't saved that yet. So let me save it. And I'm going to have to end my program and read it again to read that file back in. So it still had my old tags in there. There we go. Problem with your 1990 Jeep Cherokee. Dear Evelyn, when I heard about the trouble you had with your 1990 Jeep Cherokee, I was deeply troubled. I've recently been assigned to your case, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, we didn't get all of them because, oh, it's long here. Like system, we didn't quite get. So after we've processed all of the ones that we can do automatically, maybe we want to come here and we'll just do one more. We don't have to do them all for you to get the picture here. So let's just go ahead and put the brake system in here. So I'll do another replace. And in this case, I'm looking for system. And I think I want to replace it with whatever is in the right column. So this is M. I just want whatever's after the last column in M. The anti-skid system. So, let me declare another variable here. Dim data as a variant. Data equals, and then I'm going to split whatever is in that column. What column has the system data? Column M. That's 13. So whatever is in column 13 of my current row, and I'm going to split that based on the colon. So now that's going to make an array of the values from there, and I'm just going to use that array, and I want the last entry in it, so I'll ask for the upper boundary of that array. Bound of data. Managed to sneak a 5 in there when I hit F5. So now I'm going to go pull that message in again. And we should now have currently reviewing the Jeep anti-skid system for a possible recall. Probably should just lowercase that, don't you think? Yeah, the Jeep anti-skid system for a possible recall. And so that's the idea. So whether we've got it going with some kind of general loop or we're handling them individually, we can customize that message based on what we're doing. Questions? Yep. Okay, so the question is, right here where I say dim data as variant, it's telling you got a duplicate declaration in the current scope, and you don't have another variable called data there anywhere. Yeah, sometimes the interpreter gets confused about this, and I'll stumble across that error myself from time to time, and the only way around it is to like close Excel, open it again, or choose a different name. Yeah, just stop your code, call it data2, and then you'll be okay. Might be able to get, yeah, I think you do have to close Excel for that to reset. Question? Yeah, let's take a look. The question is, what's going on here with data and U-bound? So let's first look at what happens here with split. So we are looking at whatever's in column M, column 13. That's that system where it's like breaks, colon, something, colon, anti-skid, whatever. And so what we're saying is read that value in and as a string and split it into an array of strings based on this delimiter. So after this line runs, data should be an array. So I should be able to ask for the 0th position, and that should be the first part of that array. If I look for the number 1 position, will be the next part of that array. And we're actually after the 3rd one. I'm sorry, which is number 2. That's the one that we're after. The trouble is, we don't know how many colons there's going to be, because there's a different number depending on which system it's talking about. And so we're going after the last one, and so we have to calculate that too. Fortunately, there's a function ubound. I give it the array, and it tells me the upper boundary. And so by taking that upper boundary and supplanting my hard-coded 2, that will pull the last value off the array. Got it? Yeah, we're after the last one. So I think the idea here in this data is that it kind of goes, here's the description of the failure. It starts high and then goes down to the more specific item. And this may only be that I only brought in, yeah, the data that we're looking at here is only anti-lock breaks related. But there are hundreds of thousands of complaints in the original data set, and they're all different components. Okay, so we've got the message built. Now it's time to send it. So even though we can send at BYU without using username and password, let's go ahead and collect a username and password as well. So you can get the much more general approach. Fortunately, we already have here a form called form password. And, it's set up for Gmail account and password name. So that's okay. Let's take a look at this. So that is called, it's called label 3. That's a great name. Label 3 and label 5. And what's this? 3, 4, and 5. That's not too bad. So when we open this form, we'll probably want to change that because we're trying to collect BYU credentials. So let's go ahead and open this form and then get it going. So this is kind of interesting. I don't think we've ever taken this path before, but we're going to want to open that form, and then before we show it, we're going to want to make some changes to it. So I'm going to want to do this probably a little earlier in the process. So even maybe even first thing before we even open the text file. So I'm going to say that I want to load what's it called? Yeah, FRM password. That'll bring it into memory but not show it on the screen. Once it's in memory, I can now refer to the different elements of it. So FRM password dot label 3 equals BYU net ID. Now we're not after a domain, so label 4, I'm just going to set that equal to a 0 length string. That's the one that currently says @gmail.com. We don't normally think of your net ID as at byu.edu. In fact, I don't think it works that way. But so we're going to take that part off, and this is just going to say, I'll just put this as password. That should be label 5. Thank you. Now, I don't really remember how this form communicates its information back. Somehow we're going to need to know if it was canceled, because there's an OK and a cancel button. So let's take a look at the OK button. Oh, okay, this is actually pretty simple. So what this does is that if you hit cancel, it blanks out the password. And so I'm going to put up this user form. I'm going to wait around until it closes, and then we're going to see what is there. And if the password's blank, it means one of two things. Either hit cancel, or they didn't give me a password. Either way, I'm not going to be able to send this message. And so we're going to look at the password. If the password's blank, we're just going to be done. Otherwise, we're going to read in the username and the password. So let's go ahead and show the form. We've got it configured. Let's show the form. So form password.show. And that will pause there until the user presses OK or cancel or closes the form. And then let's just look at it. If frm password dot txt username, txt password. If that value is equal to a 0-length string, then exit sub. So if that's blank, either you didn't give me a username, you didn't give me a password, or you hit cancel, and I'm out of here. Otherwise, I'll continue on, and I'm ready to read those values. So I've got a username and a password variable here, un and pw. So un equals form, that's a long thing to type. Oh. txt form password dot txt password. And that should not be the username. That should be the password. Oh yeah, I knew what the password was called. It was the username I was going after. And it's called txt account. So my username equals that, my password equals this. And so we're going to put up the form, we're going to collect the information, store it in these variables. At this point, we can close the form if we want to. But if we leave it open, if we have to run it again, it'll still remember the username and password that's plugged in there, because we're never dumping it out of memory. So that'll be nice. Subsequent run will keep those values in there. Okay, I think I've got what I need. Oh, I'm ready to send the message. One thing I want to do, though, is that I'm going to split off, because right now, the message contains the subject. The way I've configured this file is I want the subject line to be the first part of my template, the first line, and then the message is the rest. I've got to split that because there's two different parameters I have to send that to when I go to send the message. And so let's just go ahead and do that. So I think I've got a variable called subject. Subject equals, I want to pull in everything. This won't be too bad. Message dot split. No, sorry, wrong language. Split message. The delimiter is going to be a carriage return. It's actually a carriage return sequence. The line end of line sequence, which there's a constant for, VB new line. It's character number 13 followed by character number 10, but there's a constant for that. And then I just want the 0th item. That'll be everything up until the first carriage return. I thought I was being clever. with split. But now I have to make my message everything but the first line. That's a little more difficult with this approach. So it's a little bit sloppy. A better way, maybe a cleaner way, would be to actually find where that first... Yeah, let's go ahead and do it that way. Instead of saying my subject equals this, do I have a variable called position already? Yeah. Position equals in string, starting at 1, looking at my message, looking for the new line. Okay, so instead of split, which is really handy just to get the first line, because we'll need that same information for the second line as well. We're going to want the left of the message starting at the first character and then going up to my position. But that will include the first character of the carriage return. So I'll want position -1. Right, position is going to be where it first finds the new line in my message. And so I want everything to the left of that, including not the first part of that message. Okay, of the carriage return sequence. Message equals the mid of message, starting where? So position would be the first carriage return. I don't want that. I don't want to start with the next return, would be position +1, so I think I want position +2. So position is the first character in the end of line sequence. Position +1 is the second character at the end of line sequence. Position +2 is the first character after the carriage return sequence. I think. So let's run it to there and see what we have. I'll stop and run again. Wrong number of arguments. Oh. I'm not sure why I have where I'm starting. Left always starts from the first place. Put in my credentials. Okay, so let's see if my subject is there. That looks good. The message now shouldn't have the subject on it. Yeah, it starts with Dear Evelyn. I think I'm ready to send it. Oh, we don't have the email. That's okay. It's in, which column is it in? Email's in column 4. Okay, so let me do this. Debug.print send BYU mail. I was kind of hoping for some help there. Oh, I'm trying to buy mail. BYU mail. There we go. Okay, so send to is just going to be column 4 of our current row. Send from, let me just hard code that. My net ID is gotten a variable called username. My password is a variable called password. My subject is subject. And my body is message. And I don't have an attachment, so that should be the end. Okay, this is going to print what that function returns. So it will either print true or false. It's a Boolean function, so it's got to return one of those. So let me Shift F8. Ooh. Oh, thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, so actually, I did that on purpose so we could see the error message. So this failed, it printed false, and it printed this. At least one recipient is required, but none were found. So, and 2 is blank. So, yeah, very good. So this needs to be column number 4. And did you see something else as well? Did you see something else, or was it just that? All right, let's try that one again. Taking a little longer. Taking too long. Still running. Failed again. Let's see why this one failed. Transport failed to connect to the server. Did anyone have success sending that? Yeah. I did put my password wrong. But unless they've started checking for a password there, which I highly doubt, they might have. They might have turned off this. They might have turned off this server altogether. Failed to connect to the server. Let's try it again. Oh, it could be that my former students have abused this open mail server and they've turned it off. Should have checked this example before I came to class. Yeah, this is going to fail again. It doesn't take that long to send a message. So this will take a little work for me to track down why this particular server is not responding. But let's talk about what it takes to do this with Gmail. It used to be easier than it is now. Gmail now says, if you're just going to authenticate with a username and a password, you've got to expressly tell us that that's okay. And I've given you some information on these two things right here. So your first option is to make a setting called Allow Less Secure Apps. So in your Google account, you can say, hey, I'm going to allow less secure apps to interact with my server. In which case, it will allow this kind of remote connection with just a username and a password to go through. So that's a setting that you have to make to get your Gmail account to do that. Second possibility is to set up what's referred to as an app password. To be able to do app passwords, you have to be set up with dual factor authentication. So you've got to have your Gmail account set up to where when you sign in, it sends you a text message or it uses the Google authenticator and you say, yeah, I really am who I say I am. But once you do that, you can actually generate a username and a password, maybe just a password that goes with your account that you can use just for this particular application. And so it gives you a password that's used only for this kind of authentication. And once you've done that, you could use that to dispatch the message as well. Both of those are more than I want to do or I'm ready to do right now. But that's one of those two approaches, what it takes to be able to get Gmail to work as the back-end server for this. So a little bit anticlimactic for today's message, but let me show you what it takes to send a text message. The way that we're sending text messages here is just using the email to text gateway. So if we go back to our worksheet, we've got a sheet called System Info, and all major carriers allow you to send an email to a particular address and to route that email as a text message, to convert an email to a text message. And so if you are on AT&T, the way that you get an email to go to your text message is your 10-digit number at txt.att.net. So if you email to that address, that will get routed as a text message to your phone. So it's pretty easy to send a text message. You just have to know the carrier that you're sending it on. So you just format the email address and then send that through. So sending a text message from Excel, we do it just as sending an email that gets routed as a text message. Question here? This always becomes the question that at least runs through someone's mind. And that is, I may not know the carrier, but I know how to write a loop. So I could just send it at all of those. What happens to those other ones? They don't get routed. It's like we can't route that. And so yeah, the comment here is problem solved. So you should be respectful of that system. And if you have to do that, occasionally that's probably okay. But don't be sending thousands of text messages where you're just hoping to get the right carrier in that way. And this is only 9. These are like the main carriers. There are lots of other carriers. And a little Googling will find the email to text gateway for all of those carriers. And it's actually kind of neat. You respond to that text message, and it'll get routed right back to the original email that it came from. So you can hold a conversation through email and someone's text message at the same time. Okay, folks, we got one more class on Wednesday, and then I will get a review session scheduled for Friday. One last question? If it returns false when you're saying debug.print, it's saying, oh, it didn't successfully dispatch the message. If it doesn't display an error, that's an issue. It should either display an error or it should bring back true. All right, thanks for coming. Class dismissed. Yeah.